Hi everybody, it's me again, the redheaded Okie who likes to talk, and mostly I talk about books. Sometimes I'll probably be talking about other things. But I'm back and I'm going to talk about my audiobooks that I listened to. I know there's controversy about that. Some people are like, oh, you don't read audiobooks, you listen to them, and it doesn't count as reading. But personally, I think it counts as reading because I get pretty much the same. And then sometimes on audiobooks too, I'll go back and I'll get the printed version to go over it, just to you know, if there's something about it that intrigues me and I feel like I want to see it, I just have that need for that tactile experience, so I'll do that. But anyway, so my May 2025 audiobooks. I started with The Vor Game by Lois McMaster Bujold. I'm working my way through the Vorkosigan saga. I'm really enjoying this series. Miles is a terrific character. He gets into a lot of trouble and he gets himself out. It's kind of fun watching him figure out how to get out. This time out, he gets involved in a mutiny. He graduates from the academy and he gets sent to a post on this frozen island. He almost dies. He gets involved in a mutiny, and then he gets arrested and he gets sent on this undercover mission where he runs into his emperor, who has run away from his emperorship. I don't think that's what it's called, but I like that word. And and has to rescue him because he's been captured. And then he ends up hooking back up with his Dendari mercenaries that he had created in a previous book when he was 17. He kind of stumbled into this, being the leader of this mercenary group that he named the Dendaris. The narration was by Grover Gardner. Good job on narration. Grover Gardner, I've listened to a lot of books with him, and he's very good in his narration. And it's just a really fun space opera. If you like that kind of thing, I do recommend it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Miles gets into next time. So, my next book is Lion in the Valley by Elizabeth Peters. This is the Amelia Peabody series, if anybody is aware. And Amelia is an Egyptologist along with her husband Emerson, and they do have a son who, his name is Walter, but they've nicknamed him Ramsey because he's just like this genius little Egyptologist kid. I love this series. I love Amelia Peabody and her parasol. She can make it through any crowd, and so, you know, it's like, what are you going to do? So I do recommend this one as well. And again, I'm working my way through this whole series, just like these are a couple of series I'm working on audiobook wise. There's a murder, there's Egyptology, there's archaeology, and then there's the Father of Curses, Emerson, her husband. The narration is by Susan O'Malley. I did listen to this one on Libby, my library app, which was really good. I've fallen in love with the Libby app. The board game I listened to on my Audible, because it's an Audible book that I'd purchased a while back. She always just winds these mysteries up so well. They make sense. They're fun. Very entertaining. So I do like the Amelia Peabody's. My next book is Susan Hill's The Woman in Black. I had seen this movie a while back. Daniel Radcliffe is in it. It's a gorgeous movie. It's a great movie. I loved it so much it scared the crap out of me. Arthur Kipps is a young lawyer. He gets sent to the Ill Marsh house and to organize a deceased woman's papers. A woman was elderly, very elderly when she died. I started listening to this one on Audible, and then my Audible membership, I had discontinued it because I found Libby. Don't tell Jeff Bezos. And so I've finished it up reading it. I borrowed it instead because the Audible wasn't available on Libby. The narrator, I can't pronounce his name. It's Paapa Essiedu. Good job, British guy, obviously. I and it was really good, and the book is scary too. So to continue my haunted house stories, I also listened again to Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. Sorry. I did listen to this one on my Audible because I had purchased it a while back. I'd listened to it before. I've also read it in print. I have a copy of the book. Dr. Montague invites Eleanor, Theodora, and Luke to Hill House for an experiment in paranormal activity. He wants to record paranormal activity and write a book about it. And this is what happens to them when they get there. Highly recommend Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House. The book it's short, but it's gorgeous. It's wonderful. The audio book was narrated by Bernadette Dunn. She did an excellent job. Really good narration. Very moody. She conveyed the dread and the suspense, and I mean, it was just, I absolutely love this book. Shirley Jackson has very quickly become one of my all-time favorite authors. I will always recommend her. So just to let you know on that one. My next book that I listened to this month was called The Gift of the Jews by Thomas Cahill. So back when I was in college a couple years ago, I recently went back to college. I have since finished, got my bachelor's. Woo! I had read this. Thomas Cahill has a series called The Hinges of History, and the one that I read in college was called How the Irish Saved Civilization. It was narrated by Liam Neeson. Totally recommend that one, especially if you're a Liam Neeson fan. And it just talks about a particular space of time and event by a certain group of people that has had a lasting effect on Western history. Western civilization, I should say, probably is a better way to term it. And The Gift of the Jews, according to Thomas Cahill, which I'm sure a lot of people will argue with this, the Jews came up with a new concept on how to perceive time. Time is not a wheel going around and around and around, as most civilizations, when Abraham was wandering around the desert, they perceived it flatly, and you went through time and you circled around and you came back, and that was existence, right? The Jews created a linear timeline that we're moving forward towards something, which would be, the afterlife, what comes after, which, Christian civilization knows as heaven, hell, that kind of thing. I don't know the Jewish version of it. Was not taught Jewish tradition, so I couldn't say. They also gave us personalization, the individual perspective, as in, this gave people, because most civilizations, gods were impersonal, and they did things like they created storms, they created earthquakes, they created volcanoes. They did all of that because of stuff they were doing in their lives, and unaware of the effect of the consequences it would have on human beings that lived on this earth, that they affected with their actions, even though it really wasn't something. Every now and then they would interact with different people, of course, and those are the stories that we have, like the Greek myths. But really the gods were out there doing their own thing, paying their own attention. The Jewish God was focused on a certain group of people, and had a specific goals and plans for this specific people for a specific reason. And that is something that had never been perceived of before. The narration here was done by Claire Bloom. Good job. Easy to listen to. She's British, so very kind of spinstery school teacher voice. I'm sorry if you don't. Anyway, I would recommend this if you're interested in this kind of thing. It's an interesting perspective on things. Like I said, this is according to Thomas Cahill, so however accurate that may be. My next book is another series by Dennis E. Taylor. This is the first book in the series. It's called We Are Legend, We Are Bob. So it's about this dude named Bob, present day, and he's just come into this big pot of money because he sold a software app, right? Or he sold an app, or however you say that. And he decides to get his head frozen because he'd heard about it just recently, about getting your head frozen, that you could be reanimated later, right? So he gets his head frozen. He goes to meet his friends, and he's in the equivalent of getting hit by a bus, and he dies. His consciousness comes to, and he finds out it's like 150 years later, or something like that. 100 years later, and his brain has been uploaded, and now he is a computer, basically. He's not a robot, he's not an android, he's the operating software of this computer, and he's talking to this doctor. The world governments have changed quite drastically, and what they want to do is they want to upload him into a spaceship and send him out, because the Earth is in trouble because of the damage that's been done to climate change. They've had wars, and it's quickly becoming uninhabitable. And so they want to send a ship out into space to find a new planet for people and establish, but they want an intelligent ship, not because they can't send people out there, but they can send a ship out that doesn't require food and waste and everything that a human would require, or several humans would require, wouldn't have the loneliness factor, whatever. So Bob gets to clone himself. So there's more than one Bob, and he every time he clones himself, he gives it a name, like Riker and Homer and whatever he comes up with at the time. At first he's kind of naming them after like characters and shows that he watched when he was alive on Earth, and then he's just naming them, I guess. I don't know, I didn't get that, but anyway, it was a good story. It was fun. There's a lot of humor in it. There was a lot of examination of like how he imagines you would adapt to something like this, because he doesn't really have emotions the way, and he talks about that. He's like he like has these thoughts that are conveyed by emotional words, but he's not really feeling those emotions. So like as a human, you feel the emotion. You'll have sweat, you'll have trembling, you'll have butterflies in your stomach, you'll have anxiety, that that kind of thing. But he has the thoughts that you would have when you have those kind of emotions, but he doesn't have those physical sensations, which is, he comments on that quite a bit, how odd that is, which I thought was an interesting aspect of this. The narration was by Ray Porter. It's the first in the Bobiverse series. Quite likely I'll be checking out a few more of these. It was a fun read. If you like sci-fi, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of politics and stuff, because there was negotiations, there was the changing politics of the planet Earth, and the reasons why they were sending out. All of that was a lot of fun. It was really well done. The next book that I listened to was Once Upon a Time. This was a short one. Several of these are short ones, that's why there's so many. Was Once Upon a Time in the North by Philip Pullman. This is a prequel in his Dark Material series. This is a very short story that tells about, it's told from Lee Scoresby's point of view, the aeronaut, the guy in the balloon, and it's how he met the polar bear, Yorick Bernison, I think is how you would say that, but I'm probably not saying it correctly. It was narrated by David Harewood. Good job on the narration. It was just a fun little story. It didn't really add anything to the overall series, but it was kind of just like a vignette, day in the life of Lee Scoresby. So that was kind of fun, and just being able to touch back in and be in that world for a little bit. So that was kind of fun. My next one is The Notorious Benedict Arnold, a true story of adventure, heroism, and treachery by Steve Sheinkin. I'm sorry, We Are Bob was written by Dennis Taylor, I think it was. Let me check the notes. Yeah, Dennis E. Taylor. But this one, Notorious Benedict Arnold, was written by Steve Sheinkin. Here's my notes. This was my original feeling when I finished this. Benedict Arnold was an asshole. He made lots of enemies. They came after him. And then he felt like, Benedict felt like the Revolutionary Army turned on him. He was all, oh, I'm Mr. Injured, right? I did all of this stuff. I sacrificed. I did this. I did that. And they won't even pay me $20,000 so I can buy this house for my rich wife that came from a rich family that expects me to provide fancy things for her. This wife, his second wife, by the way, just incidentally happened to be a royalist sympathizer. And so she was able to help him make those connections so that he could... His plan was to turn West Point over to the British because he felt like that would be like strike a really hard psychological blow to the budding revolution, right? The budding country. George Washington defended this guy until he just couldn't defend him anymore. And then when he realized what he had done, or what he had planned to do, because he got caught, it didn't come to fruition, he turned on him hardcore and went after him. So, you know, we all know about Benedict Arnold, we've heard. Anyway, so there's a lot of details here. It was kind of a dry read. It was more dates and times, and this is what happened. And he went there. There was this horrible march to Quebec that they were on that was pretty gruesome. They, you know, well, war in those times, gruesome. Anyway, he was injured. They almost cut off his leg as a result. He had gout. So Benedict Arnold was not a super healthy guy, so that might have led to a lot of his ugly disposition, because he was probably in pain pretty much every day of his life due to his war wounds and his gout, which had started before he was actually wounded in battle. But he was enthusiastic. He would just throw himself into things, and it was like, damn the consequences. Whatever happens, happens. The narration was by Mark Bramhall. Good job on the narration. Kept things moving along at a nice clip. But it was just kind of an interesting, because I thought, well, you know what, I've heard stories about Benedict Arnold my whole life. It's, we know what it stands for, but what exactly did the guy do, right? He must have done something, so what exactly did he do? If you're curious about that, this is a fairly quick listen that will give you a good idea of Benedict Arnold. There's probably books that go into more detail and maybe a little more narrative and that type of thing. This is more of a relaying of facts. But it was a good, instructive book on, just to give you kind of a grounding of what exactly old Benedict did. My next book is The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart. This is her King Arthur series. There's 4 books in this series. This is the first one. It's narrated by Derek Perkins. Good job on the narration. Again, a British voice. I like being narrated to by a British voice, okay? Male or female, it just sounds more pleasant on my ears, I guess you could say. I love this book series. I've read this book before. This is one of the best King Arthur series that I've ever read in my entire life. And I don't know, I came across it and I was like, oh, it's been a while since I read that, so I'm gonna listen to it again. And then I read the number 2 in the Lemony Snicket, a series of unfortunate events, The Reptile Room, where the Baudelaire children go to live with Monty, the guy that studies the snakes. I can't think of what that's called, heptorologist or something. This was narrated by Tim Curry, and as you can imagine, well done, Tim Curry. You can't really go wrong with that. And we all, if you've got any kind of pop culture awareness, you know what the story is about. So I won't go into it too deeply. Just a fun, quick little listen, which is what I was looking for. And then the last book of the month was Mary Roach's Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers, which I've been listening to for the last 3 days, finished up this morning. And this book is so wild. I like Mary Roach. I've read her books before. I like her sense of humor. I like the way she approaches, and I like the way she digs into these like random details about these things that you just don't think about. You know stuff like this goes on. You know that human bodies are disposed with. You know that human bodies are donated to medical research, but you just don't think about what that means and how people perceive them and how it's thought about and debated and the conversations that are had for people to be able to do these things and what they learn from it. And this is what so 2 fun facts that I learned from this was that that doctors who use decapitated heads to practice reconstructive surgery have to cover the faces a lot of times for the most of the time that they're in the room with these decapitated heads, because it disturbs them to have uncovered decapitated heads in the room with them. Medical students apparently will have some problems with just being amongst dead bodies, whether they're slicing into them or not, which I thought was rather interesting. I wrote that this book was funny, gross, and informative. The other fun fact that I learned that I want to mention from this book is that there is a doctor out there at the time of this book was published, that there was one doctor in the world who thinks that it's possible to do either, depending on your perspective, a head transplant or a body transplant. So basically it means taking a head from one body, human body, and putting it on another human body. He thinks that's possible and that person could live. He doesn't think they'd be up walking around. They would be paralyzed. And he says the purpose of this would be to take the head of a paralyzed person, say a quadriplegic, and putting it on the body of a person who's not quadriplegic but who has passed away for random, perhaps head injuries, I'm assuming, because you'd want the body to be relatively undamaged, and that person could exist, and the purpose of that would be extending their life. They wouldn't necessarily, like I said, they wouldn't be able to get up, move around, play basketball or anything, but because of the unique situation of a quadriplegic or a paraplegic, their lives are shortened due to that condition, and putting that head on a able body would extend the life of these quadriplegics. And there's at least one rich dude that has signed up for this. So, as of the publication of this book, I think this is the older book, I don't really know. The narration was by Shelley Fraser. Good job. She's very succinct and informative and matter of fact in what she was relaying, and some of this was really gruesome and gross. But like I said, the way Mary Roach approaches her subjects, it's easy to digest, as it were, especially the chapter on cannibalism. If you like this sort of thing, she's the lady to inform you about it. So anyway, I covered a lot of books, had 10 audiobooks this month, because a lot of them were quite short, only 2 or 3 hours long. And that was my audiobook journey for the month of May 2025. Thank you all, and I hope you have a great weekend and a great month of June coming up. Bye.